Okay, so we're diving deep today into creating a hook point.
Mm.
Something way more interesting than just a tagline. And we're going all in on Brendan Kane's book, Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World. Even the foreword, you sent over the whole thing.
It's a great choice.
Yeah.
Kane's got a pretty impressive track record. He's worked with MTV, Taylor Swift, even Paramount Pictures. So his framework is definitely battle-tested.
To kick things off, can you break down what a hook point actually is?
Yeah.
Seems like it's more than just, a USP.
Yeah, it definitely goes deeper than that. It's got to grab your attention right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
But it also has to hint at something more, something valuable. It's that spark of intrigue that makes you want to know more.
Okay, so like early Netflix, no late fees.
Hmm.
That was a game changer compared to Blockbuster.
Mm.
And it totally changed how we thought about renting movies. To me, that feels like a hook point.
Absolutely. It disrupted the entire industry. It addressed a major pain point for customers, and it forced everyone to rethink the whole experience.
Makes sense. But I feel like there's more to it than just being different. Kane really emphasizes authenticity.
Oh, for sure. A hook point needs a strong story. And that story can't feel fake. It has to be connected to your core values, your purpose. Otherwise, it comes across as just another marketing ploy.
Right, like those brands that try to jump on every trending hashtag, even if it makes zero sense for them.
Yeah, exactly. People can see right through that, and it just erodes trust.
That makes me think of Tom's Shoes and their one-for-one promise.
Mm.
That worked because it was tied to a real story, helping children in need. It wasn't just clever marketing. It felt true to their mission.
And that's what gives it staying power, right? Think about the Blair Witch Project. That whole marketing campaign hinged on the footage being real. Obviously, it was a movie, but it tapped into that primal fascination we have with the unknown. It worked because it felt authentic, even if it was manufactured.
I see what you mean. There has to be real substance behind the flash.
Exactly. A hook point without authenticity is just a flash in the pan. It might get you attention for a minute, but it won't create any lasting engagement.
So you have to know yourself, know your values, and then figure out how to express that in a way that grabs attention. Andy stays true to who you are.
Yeah, that's the sweet spot right there. And once you find it, you're on the right track to a hook point that really connects.
Okay, I'm feeling more confident about crafting my own hook point now. But how do I know if it'll actually resonate with my audience? We're not all marketing gurus.
Well, understanding your audience is crucial. You got to know what makes them tick, what keeps them up at night, what they're dreaming of. A great hook point speaks directly to those needs and desires.
Like Dr. Michael Brewis, the sleep doctor. He knows that everyone struggles with sleep these days. His hook point positions him as the expert right away. It makes people want to hear his solutions.
Exactly. It's not just about being clever or different. It's about tapping into that real need or desire your audience has.
Okay, so let's say I've nailed my hook point. It's authentic. It resonates with my audience. Am I done? Can I just coast on that forever?
I wish it were that simple. Unfortunately, the world is constantly changing. Markets shift. Attention spans get shorter. What worked yesterday might totally flop tomorrow.
You're telling me I can't just kick back and relax?
Hook points aren't a set-it-forget-it kind of thing. You've got to constantly test, refine, and innovate. Think of it like a garden. It needs constant care and attention to thrive.
Okay, so it's more like Disney theme parks.
Yeah.
They're always adding new attractions to keep things fresh and exciting, like Star Wars Land. They know how to keep people coming back for more.
Exactly. They're masters at evolving their story, adding new layers to their hook point, keeping it all relevant.
I'm seeing what you mean. Even when you find a hook point that works, the journey doesn't end there. You have to stay adaptable and keep experimenting.
And that's the beauty of it. It's a dynamic process that keeps you on your toes and forces you to constantly think about how to better connect with your audience.
This is making a lot of sense. But what about when you're just starting out? Do you always have to build an audience from scratch? Is there any way to jumpstart the process?
Not necessarily. You can leverage existing traffic. Think about partnering with influencers who already have a following. Tap into online communities where your target audience hangs out. Even your own social media can be a launch pad.
So like how YouTube got huge by letting people embed videos on their MySpace pages back in the day, piggybacking on that existing platform to reach a massive audience.
Smart. Absolutely brilliant. It's about finding creative ways to get in front of the right people without starting from zero.
Okay, this is all coming together.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to circle back to authenticity. Why is it so crucial when you're crafting a hook point?
Yeah.
Especially when you want to stick.
It all comes down to trust. We're bombarded with marketing messages constantly. Everyone's competing for our attention, making promises, trying to sell us something.
Yeah, we've all developed a pretty good BS detector by now.
Exactly. So if your hook point feels fake or like just another sales tactic, people will tune you out. They've heard it all before.
But if it feels genuine, if it's rooted in a real story that reflects your values, that's when you can break through.
Right, because people want to connect with something real, something they believe in. They want to feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves.
So a strong hook point is like a bridge between your brand and your audience.
Yeah,
And that bridge has to be built on trust.
beautifully put. Without trust, your message will never truly resonate.
Okay, this is making me rethink my entire approach. Give me some examples of brands that have nailed this whole hook point thing. Who should I be studying?
One that comes to mind is Bumble, the dating app. It was founded by Whitney Wolf.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't her whole thing about empowering women in the dating world?
Yeah.
Flipping the script on who makes the first move.
Exactly. She saw how traditional dating apps often left women feeling like they had to wait for men to take the lead. And she wanted to create a platform where women felt more in control.
And that became Bumble's hook point. Empowering women. Simple, powerful. And it obviously resonated with a huge audience.
And it wasn't just a marketing slogan, it was a core value baked into the app's design and functionality.
And it clearly worked.
Yeah.
Bumble has become massively successful.
Yeah.
Millions of users worldwide.
It's a textbook example of a strong hook point, authentic targeted, addressing a real need in the market.
Okay, that's inspiring.
Huh.
But let's be real. Not everyone is going to create the next Bumble. Any examples of, let's say, less dramatic hook points that have still been effective?
Sure, sometimes it's about finding a simple, compelling way to explain your unique value proposition. Think about Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek.
Ah, yes. The dream working less, living more. Sign me up.
Exactly. The title itself is the hook point. It promises a solution to a pain point that resonates with millions of people feeling overworked and trapped in the daily grind.
Right, and while the book obviously goes deeper than working just 4 hours a week, that initial hook grabs your attention and makes you want to learn more.
It's brilliant because it's concise, specific, and incredibly appealing. It taps into that deep desire for freedom and flexibility.
It's like, who wouldn't be intrigued by a 4-hour work week, even if it seems a little far-fetched?
And that's the power of a well-crafted hook point. It creates that sense of intrigue and possibility that draws people in.
Okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm getting a handle on this whole hook point thing. But before we go any further, I want to shift gears and talk about storytelling. Kane seems to think it's crucial to this process.
He's absolutely right. A hook point is at its strongest when it's brought to life by a compelling story. It's not enough to just state your value. You need to connect with people emotionally.
So how do you do that? What are the ingredients of a truly captivating story?
Well, first and foremost, it needs to be authentic, like we've been talking about. It needs to feel true to your brand's values and mission.
Right, nobody wants to feel like they're being sold a bill of goods.
Exactly. Second, it needs to be relatable. It has to connect with your audience's experiences, their challenges, their aspirations.
It needs to make them feel seen and understood.
Yeah,
Like you're speaking directly to them.
precisely. And finally, a great story needs to be memorable. It has to leave a lasting impression, something people will remember long after they've finished listening.
So it's not just about telling a story, it's about telling the right story in the right way.
Exactly. It's a craft, an art form. It takes time and practice to master.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But let's get practical. Can you give me some examples of brands that have used storytelling effectively to amplify their hook points?
Sure. One that stands out is Red Bull. They've built their entire brand around pushing limits, achieving the extraordinary.
Right, it's not just an energy drink, it's a lifestyle, a statement about who you are.
And they do it through storytelling. They sponsor extreme athletes. They stage incredible events. They create content that captures the thrill of adventure.
Like Felix Baumgartner's supersonic skydive from the edge of space.
Exactly. That was Red Bull. They turned a scientific endeavor into a global spectacle, and it perfectly embodied their brand's core values.
So they didn't just say they were about pushing limits, they showed it in a way that was visually stunning and emotionally powerful.
And it worked brilliantly. That event generated billions of media impressions and solidified Red Bull's image as a brand synonymous with adventure and pushing boundaries.
Wow, talk about a story that sticks with you. So the lesson here is that a great story can make your hook point truly unforgettable.
It can elevate it from a simple statement to a powerful experience. That resonates on a deep, visceral level.
This is making me rethink how I approach my own marketing. But let's be real, not every brand has the budget to send someone skydiving from space. What about us mere mortals? How can we tell compelling stories without breaking the bank?
One effective approach is to focus on the human element. People connect with stories about other people.
So even if you're selling a product or service, the story should always be about the people it impacts.
Exactly. Think about Dove's Real Beauty campaign.
Oh, yeah. The one with the real women, not models in their ads.
Exactly. They challenged conventional beauty standards and celebrated the diversity of real women, and it resonated with their audience because it felt authentic and relatable.
Right. They weren't just selling soap. They were telling stories about self-acceptance and body positivity.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that made their message much more powerful and memorable.
So even without a Hollywood budget, you can still tell compelling stories that amplify your hook point. It's about finding the human connection, the emotional core of your message.
That's where the real magic happens. When you can tap into those universal human experiences, that's when your story will truly resonate.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this.
Yeah.
But we've been talking about hook points and storytelling as separate things. How do they actually work together? How do you weave them into a cohesive whole?
Think of it this way. Your hook point is the bait, and your story is the hook.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So the hook point grabs their attention.
And the story reels them in, keeps them engaged, and makes them want to stay.
So you need both to be effective.
Absolutely. A strong hook point without a good story will fall flat. And a great story without a clear hook point might not get noticed in the first place.
It's a powerful combination, that's for sure.
And when you get it right, you can create something truly remarkable.
Okay, before we move on to the next big idea, let's quickly recap what we've learned so far about crafting a killer hook point. What are the key takeaways you want our listener to walk away with?
I think there are three big ones. First, authenticity is paramount. Your hook point needs to be rooted in your brand's core values and mission.
Otherwise, it's just going to feel like a cheap marketing trick.
Exactly. Second, you need to know your audience inside and out. What keeps them up at night? What are their secret desires? A great hook point speaks directly to those needs and aspirations.
It's about finding that sweet spot where your unique value intersects with your audience's deepest desires.
Right. And finally, a hook point is most effective when it's paired with a compelling story.
Because stories help you connect with people on an emotional level and make your message unforgettable.
Exactly. So if you can nail those three things, authenticity, audience understanding, and storytelling, you'll be well on your way to crafting a hook point that truly stands out.
This is gold.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you don't have that pre-existing audience just yet. How do you start building that initial momentum? Where do you even begin?
That's a great question. And it's something a lot of people struggle with. One of the most effective ways to start is to leverage existing platforms and communities.
So work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Right? Don't try to reinvent the wheel when there are perfectly good wheels already out there.
Exactly. There are already so many platforms with built-in audiences. Think social media, online forums, industry publications, even podcasts like this one.
It's about finding those spaces where your target audience is already hanging out and then finding a way to add value to those communities.
Precisely. Don't just barge in and start promoting yourself. People can smell a self-serving agenda a mile away.
Right. No one likes a party crasher.
Instead, focus on providing something valuable, something that will genuinely benefit the community. Think about it as offering a gift, a gesture of goodwill.
So like if you're a marketing expert, maybe you share some insightful tips or a case study that showcases your expertise without being overtly promotional.
Exactly. Or if you're a musician, maybe you offer a free download of one of your songs or a behind-the-scenes look at your creative process.
It's about giving before you ask.
And when you consistently add value, people start to take notice. They're more likely to trust your recommendations and be open to learning more about what you have to offer.
It's a win-win. You build credibility, you foster relationships, and you start generating genuine interest in your brand.
Exactly. And that initial momentum can be incredibly valuable as you start to cultivate your own audience.
This is really helpful. But what about when you're trying to reach a very specific niche audience? How do you find those hidden pockets of potential customers? It feels like trying to find a needle in a haystack sometimes.
It does require some detective work. You need to think about where your ideal customer hangs out both online and offline.
So like if you're selling high-end bicycles, you might start by looking at cycling forums and social media groups.
Exactly, but don't stop there. Think about local bike shops, cycling clubs, even charity rides or events.
It's about thinking beyond the obvious and getting creative with your outreach.
And don't underestimate the power of asking for recommendations. If you know someone who fits your target audience, ask them where they get their information and how they connect with others who share their interests.
So it's about tapping into your network and leveraging the power of word of mouth.
Because sometimes the best way to find a hidden audience is to ask someone who's already a part of it.
This has given me some great ideas, but I have to ask, what about paid advertising? Can't you just throw some money at Facebook or Google and reach your target audience that way?
You can certainly try, but I think paid advertising is most effective when it's used strategically to amplify an already strong hook point and story.
So it's not a magic bullet.
Yeah,
You can't just buy your way to success.
definitely not. You can't expect to throw money at a weak message and suddenly make it resonate with people.
You need a solid foundation first. You need a hook point that genuinely connects with your audience.
Exactly. Paid advertising can be a great way to reach a wider audience, but it's most effective when it's used to amplify an already compelling message.
So it's like you don't want to waste your money promoting something that people aren't going to be interested in the first place.
Precisely. And I think that's a good segue into our next big idea, the importance of testing and refining your hook point.
Because even if you've done your research and you think you've nailed it, there's always room for improvement, right?
Absolutely. And the only way to know for sure if your hook point is truly resonating is to test it out in the real world. See how people respond.
So how do you do that? What are some effective ways to test and refine your hook point?
One approach is to use A/B testing. This involves creating two slightly different versions of your hook point and then seeing which one performs better.
So like you might test two different headlines or two different images to see which one gets more clicks or engagement.
Exactly. And the beauty of A/B testing is that it gives you data-driven insights into what's working and what's not.
So you're not just relying on your gut instinct, you're actually looking at the numbers.
Right. And based on those numbers, you can then refine your hook point and make it even more effective.
But A/B testing can get pretty technical, right? What about for people who aren't data scientists?
Well, even without getting into the nitty-gritty of A/B testing, there are still some simple things you can do to gauge how your hook point is performing.
Like what kind of things?
Well, pay attention to how people are responding to your message. Are they engaging with your content? Are they asking questions? Are they sharing it with others?
So you're saying listen to the feedback you're getting both online and offline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask for feedback directly. If you're not sure if your hook point is resonating, ask a few people in your target audience what they think.
It's about getting real-world insights from the people you're trying to reach.
Right. And based on that feedback, you can then make adjustments and refine your hook point until it's truly hitting the mark.
This is all really valuable information. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to address one final question that I think is on a lot of people's minds. What about when your hook point stops working? What do you do when the magic fades?
That's a great question, and it's something that every brand will eventually face. It's what Kane refers to as hook point fatigue.
So you're saying even the best hook points have a shelf life.
Exactly. Over time, people become familiar with your message, they may get bored, or the market may simply change. And when that happens, you need to be prepared to evolve.
So it's not a one-and-done deal. You can't just create a hook point and then coast on that forever.
Not at all. Crafting a hook point is an ongoing process. You need to be constantly testing, refining, and innovating.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you know when it's time to switch things up? What are some signs that your hook point might be losing its effectiveness?
Well, one obvious sign is a decline in engagement. If you're noticing that people aren't responding to your message the way they used to, it might be time for a refresh.
So like if you're getting fewer clicks, fewer comments, fewer shares on social media.
Exactly. Or if you're noticing that your sales are starting to stagnate.
So pay attention to the numbers, but also pay attention to the qualitative feedback you're getting.
Right. If you're hearing the same criticisms over and over again, it might be a sign that your hook point is no longer resonating.
So it's about staying attuned to your audience and being willing to adapt.
Exactly. Because the world is constantly changing and your hook point needs to evolve with it.
This has been incredibly insightful, but we need to give our listener a moment to digest all this great information. Before we jump into the next part of this deep dive, we'll pause here for now.
You know, we've covered the basics, what a hook point is, why authenticity is so important, and how storytelling plays a role. But now let's look at how to really elevate your hook point to the next level.
Okay, I'm ready to level up. What's the secret sauce?
Well, one thing that really sets the pros apart is their understanding of communication design, both visual and auditory.
So we're not just talking about words on a page anymore.
Nope. Think about those first few seconds of a video online. You have to
All right.
grab their attention,
Yeah.
but you're also setting the stage for everything that comes after. It's that instant vibe check. Keep watching or swipe away.
It's kind of like when you walk into a store. You immediately get a feeling about whether you want to stay or bolt.
Exactly. Kane talks about this digital content strategist, Naveen Gowda, who studied what makes YouTube videos go viral. And it turns out little things make a big difference. Pacing, lighting, even how clearly you pronounce words.
So even if the content is great, if it's not presented well, people just bounce.
Yep. Think about those mesmerizing videos you see online, speed painting, someone expertly folding clothes. There's a visual rhythm, a satisfying completeness that keeps you hooked.
Okay, I get the concept,
Mm.
but how do I apply that to my own stuff? I'm no Spielberg.
Start with clarity. Can people instantly understand what your video is about? Does the pacing match the complexity of the topic? And lead with your most visually interesting elements.
So like if I'm making a video about a complicated recipe, I might start by showing the finished dish before I explain all the steps. Exactly. Or let's say you're giving a presentation. You might start with a bold image or a provocative question to pique their interest.
Front load the good stuff. Get that ooh shiny reaction. And don't forget about sound. Music, sound effects, your tone of voice. All of these contribute to the mood and can really keep people engaged.
This is starting to feel like a masterclass in content creation. How do I know what's going to work for my specific audience, though?
Experiment. That's the beauty of digital media. Test different approaches. See what sticks. Refine your strategy based on what resonates.
So play around with different video styles, thumbnail images, maybe even throw in some meme cards.
Exactly. Think about movie trailers. They often test different cuts to see which ones generate the most buzz.
Okay, I'm feeling more confident about creating content that actually gets seen. But what about when I'm pitching an idea or trying to land a client? Do hook points matter there too?
Absolutely. They're essential. You only have a few seconds to make a strong first impression, whether it's in person or over email.
The dreaded elevator pitch.
But it's not just about keeping it brief. It's about showcasing your value in a way that's immediately intriguing.
So instead of saying, I'm a marketing consultant, I might say something like, I help businesses like yours triple their online sales within 6 months.
Now that's got some punch. It sparks curiosity. It hints at a specific outcome. People want to know more.
Okay, but how do I avoid sounding like I'm bragging or overpromising? That can be a tough line to walk.
It goes back to authenticity. Your hook point needs to be realistic, backed up by data case studies or testimonials.
So I can mention a specific client whose sales I helped increase or a proven strategy I've developed.
Exactly. Show, don't tell. Demonstrate your expertise in a way that's impressive but believable.
So a hook point in a business setting is kind of like a mini trailer for what you can do.
That's a great way to think about it. It's that initial spark that makes people want to buy a ticket and see the whole show.
Okay, let's say I've crafted a killer hook point. I've got the data to back it up. I'm feeling good. Now what? How do I use it to seal the deal with a client?
It's all about telling the right story. And the key is to focus on their needs, their challenges.
So less me, and more. How can I help you?
Exactly. Instead of launching into a presentation about all your skills, start by asking questions.
Like, what are your biggest marketing headaches right now? Or what are your goals for the next quarter? Something like that.
You got it. Then tailor your pitch to address those specific needs.
Show them you get their pain points and that you actually have the solutions.
And this is where your hook point comes back in.
So if they're struggling to generate leads, I might say, I help a company just like yours increase their leads by 50% using targeted social media. Let's talk about how we can do the same for you.
Perfect. You've connected your hook point to their needs, demonstrated your expertise, and offered a tangible solution.
It's starting to feel like a formula for success. But there's got to be more to it than just a catchy hook point and a tailored pitch. What about trust?
You're right. Trust is essential for any strong relationship, especially in business. People need to feel like they can believe you, that you're not just blowing smoke.
Makes sense. But how do you build that trust? Especially when you're first connecting with someone. Cold outreach can feel so impersonal.
That's where the art of cold outreach comes in. The key is to provide value upfront, before you even ask for anything.
So no more generic, let's connect messages.
Definitely not. Do your homework, understand their business, and offer something specific that you genuinely think would be helpful.
So let's say I see a potential client is launching a new product. Maybe I could send them a link to a helpful article about product launch strategies.
That's a great example. Or you could offer to connect them with someone in your network who could be valuable to them.
It's about showing them that you're not just in it for yourself. You genuinely want to help them succeed.
Exactly. When you lead with generosity, people are much more likely to respond positively.
Okay, this is all clicking for me.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about online strategies. But what about offline opportunities? Do hook points and storytelling work in the real world too?
Absolutely. Think about networking events, conferences, even just casual conversations.
So you're saying every interaction is a chance to make an impact.
Exactly. A well-crafted hook point can be a great conversation starter and help you stand out from the crowd.
Let's say I'm at a conference and I meet a potential client. Instead of giving them my elevator pitch, I might say, I recently helped a company in your industry double their website traffic. I'd love to share some insights.
Now, that's an invitation people are much more likely to accept. It's concise, it's relevant, and it hints at some valuable outcomes.
It opens the door to have a real conversation where I can learn about their needs and see if we'd be a good fit.
And once you've got their attention, you can use storytelling to build rapport and connect on a deeper level.
Maybe I could share a story about a specific challenge I helped a client overcome, or a time when I really went above and beyond.
Right. Showcase your personality, your values, and your expertise in a way that's authentic and engaging.
This is all starting to make sense. Before we wrap up this part of the deep dive, I want to go back to that idea of evolving your hook point. Why is it so important to adapt over time?
Because the world never stops changing. And what worked yesterday might not work today.
So even a successful hook point can lose its effectiveness.
Exactly. You have to be constantly monitoring the market, listening to your audience, and making adjustments.
But how do you know when it's time to refresh? What are some signs that your hook point needs a makeover?
A decline in engagement is a big red flag. If people aren't responding to your message like they used to, it might be time for a change.
So fewer likes and comments on social media, less website traffic. Those are warning signs.
Yep. And if you start hearing the same negative feedback over and over, that's another clue.
It sounds like it's all about staying in tune with your audience and being flexible.
You got it. And don't wait until your hook point is completely dead to think about refreshing it. Be proactive.
So even when things are going well, it's a good idea to experiment and try new things.
Exactly. The most successful brands are always innovating and evolving. They don't rest on their laurels.
Okay, that makes sense.
Mhm.
But how do you evolve without alienating your existing audience?
Yeah.
How do you keep things fresh without losing sight of your brand?
That's the balancing act, isn't it? The key is to stay grounded in your core values and mission.
So as long as your hook point is authentic to your brand, you've got some room to play.
Think about Disney. They're always adding new attractions and experiences, but they never stray from those core values. Family imagination, magic.
It's about finding ways to grow and adapt without losing sight of who you are at your core.
And be transparent with your audience. If you're making a big change, explain why you're doing it.
So if you're targeting a new market or launching a new product, you might share a blog post or video explaining the shift.
Exactly. Transparency builds trust. It makes your audience feel like they're a part of the journey.
This has been really helpful. Before we jump into the final part of our deep dive, what are the key takeaways you want our listener to remember about evolving their hook point?
First, be aware of those signs of hook point fatigue. Declining engagement, negative feedback, stagnant sales.
Don't ignore the warning signs.
Second, be proactive. Don't wait for your hook point to completely fizzle out.
So keep experimenting and keep those creative juices flowing.
And finally, remember that evolving your hook point doesn't mean abandoning your brand's core values.
It's about finding ways to grow and adapt while staying true to yourself. This has been fantastic. But before we dive into the final part, let's pause here for a moment.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive with some strategies to really make those hook points irresistible. We've covered a lot, but there are a few more gems from Kane I think you'll find useful.
Okay, hit me with them.
One that's super effective is what he calls subverting expectations. It's basically taking a common belief or phrase and turning it on its head.
Okay, I'm not quite picturing that. Can you give me an example?
Imagine a video that opens with, "Warning, safety is dangerous."
Whoa, that's a lot jarring. Isn't safety usually, a good thing?
Exactly. That's what makes it so attention-grabbing. It challenges our assumptions, makes us want to understand what they mean.
So it's about creating that curiosity,
Right.
a little cognitive dissonance to pull people in.
Exactly. When it's done well, it can really make you stand out.
Okay, I see the potential there.
Yeah.
But how do I make sure I'm not just being controversial for no reason?
That's a good point. The key is to make sure that subverted hook point still aligns with your brand and your values.
So it's not about shock value. It's about challenging the status quo in a way that's authentic to you.
Right. And remember, the goal is to provide value. So once you've hooked them with that unexpected statement, you need to deliver.
Right, if you're going to say safety is dangerous, you better back it up.
Exactly. Otherwise, it's just a gimmick.
This makes sense.
Right.
What about when you're dealing with a really complex topic, though? How do you make a hook point that's both interesting and easy to understand?
That's a tough one. One approach is to use analogies or metaphors. Explain a complicated idea with a real-world example.
Okay, so like if I'm trying to explain a complicated algorithm, I might compare it to baking a cake.
Exactly. You could say, this algorithm takes all these different data points, combines them, and produces a result, just like a recipe takes ingredients, combines them, and produces a delicious cake.
I like that. It's simple, but it gets the point across.
And it helps people connect with the idea on a deeper level.
Okay, this is helpful. But what about when you're in a crowded market? Everyone's using the same old hook points. How do you break through and create something truly unique?
That's when you need to focus on what Kane calls your unfair advantage.
So what makes you different?
Right. What are your unique strengths, skills, or experiences that no one else can replicate?
I like that. It's about finding your secret sauce.
Once you've found it, you can build your whole hook point around it.
Okay, so let's say I'm a chef who specializes in vegan cuisine, and I've developed a unique technique for making vegan dishes that taste just as good as the non-vegan version. That's my unfair advantage.
Perfect. And your hook point could be something like, vegan food's so good you won't believe it's not meat.
Now that's a hook point that's going to get people's attention. It's intriguing, it's specific, and it speaks to something many people want.
Yeah.
Delicious food without having to compromise their values.
Exactly. And it all comes back to your unfair advantage, your unique skill.
This has been eye-opening. One last question. How do you know if your hook point is actually working?
That's the question, isn't it? There are a few key things to look for.
Okay, tell me everything.
First, pay attention to engagement. Are people responding to your message? Are they clicking, commenting, sharing, taking action?
So if my social media is blowing up, or my website is getting a ton of traffic, that's a good sign.
Those are definitely positive signs that your hook point is hitting the mark. But it's not just about attention.
Right. You want people to actually do something.
Exactly. Are they buying your product, signing up for your email list, moving further down your sales funnel?
Because a hook point that doesn't lead to action isn't really working.
And finally, pay attention to the feedback you're getting. What are people saying about your brand, your message, your hook point?
So read those comments,
Mm-hmm.
check the reviews, and don't be afraid to ask for feedback directly.
Exactly. Sometimes the best insights come straight from your audience.
This has been fantastic.
Ah.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of hook points and how to craft one that really stands out. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Just remember, a hook point isn't some magic spell. It's a tool. And like any tool, it takes practice and refinement to master it. But when you get it right, a hook point can help you cut through the noise, build trust, and achieve your goals.
So to our listener out there, go create those irresistible hook points. Find your unfair advantage, tell your story, and connect with your audience on a deeper level. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.